question to you is, what was your first job within the movie and TV industry?
Oh, wow. Cool. Great question. So it was Frasier. I was on an episode of Frasier. I was a guest star. I was in high school. I think I was a junior in high school. I was very lucky growing up in Los Angeles. Because I went to a school, we were in North Hollywood, right near Studio City and Burbank and all the, big studios, casting directors. We actually had casting directors occasionally come to our shows, and I grew up with one girl I was in school with in particular. Her dad was a producer, and basically people kind of stuck their neck out for me, and I was able to get an audition for Frasier, booked it, and that was my first job. And then that first movie was Donnie Darko, which was pretty cool. Yeah.
Donnie Darko's a great film.
Yeah, I think it's cool. I think those are good first jobs. Yeah.
It really is though, honestly.
Yeah. And I just did a TV show with David Hyde Pierce. It's going to come out in March, I think, or maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but it's about Julia Child, a new series for HBO Max. And so it was really wonderful. It felt like I had come full circle to work with David Hyde Pierce again. And especially after making Mass and sort of looking at acting and my whole career differently, the show was such a gift and such a joy to make. But it really kind of, it felt like a very culminating moment, where I was able to kind of look back at everything and think about my career in this very different perspective, having now made a movie, which has been, as old a dream as being an actor, and so it really was special to sort of get a chance to work with him again, because I remember when I was a teenager and on set on Frasier, I thought he was the greatest, and I would, at the very last minute, like 30 minutes before the taping, the writers added a line between David and I was so happy that I got to have a little bit with him. Yeah.
That's awesome. So we are here to speak about Mass, an aftermath of a violent tragedy that affects the lives of two couples in different ways. What inspired you to write this project?
Yeah, it's really, it's sort of, I feel like this is a bit painful currently, because it really was the Parkland shooting, right? I was a new parent, and it was sort of the first kind of really high profile sort of, shooting that kind of just paused the country the way some of these can, since my daughter had been born. She was a little over 1 year old, and I was a new parent. And so it affected me very differently than the previous shootings had. I was overwhelmed by it. And so I say it's painful because of what happened yesterday in Michigan. And I'm not trying to get on a soapbox or turn the conversation this way, but I was overwhelmed. I was very emotional on the day of the Parkland shooting, but there was an anger, there was a confusion and an anger for the first time that really motivated something. Right. And that night I went on Amazon, bought books on Columbine, Virginia Tech, Newtown, Aurora, Colorado, Norway. I mean, I spent the next 2 years reading nothing but books about the subject. And so, when these things happen, it kind of cuts a little deeper than it used to,
That's the same for me. That's what I say, as a parent. Not only you put yourself in both shoes, right? You know what I mean? Watching this film, you think of yourself in this character or that character, this character, because it's more of a, what would I do if this happened to my daughter? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Speaking of the roles, how pivotal was it for you to nail the casting of each of these characters?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you said it. I mean, what kept me up at night, right? What was really disarming and sort of had me kind of push, dig deeper into the subject matter. And then when the story really developed, it was really finding sort of compassion and empathy for the parents of the shooter, something that I didn't expect to find, right? I didn't expect to feel that way about these families and these people. And so that when I read about these meetings between parents, and there weren't a lot of them, but I would sort of, you'd get sort of some small details, and you knew that they had happened, and little details sort of came that the parents would share. And I just wanted to know more, because I had developed this new kind of empathy for both sides that I hadn't expected. And so, I'm an actor, right, first and foremost. And so I tried to essentially improvise these roles, improvise the dialogue, putting myself in these shoes. So it was a little bit crazy making in that sense, that it was almost a sort of schizophrenic process, but it was difficult sometimes to really flesh out the characters, because I felt so connected to each of them that I would sort of find these impasses just between myself, just sort of arguing with myself. So finding the actors for the roles, it took a good deal of time. I kind of had these blurry visions in my head, but I'll say the first person who really sort of came to light was Birney, who I knew from doing New York theater. And I had a good friendship with Reed. We never worked together, but he's like one of our great living stage actors, Reed. And you haven't seen him do as much film. And I thought, he became sort of perfect and crystallized in my head as Richard. And then from there, once we really got the wheels in motion to make the movie, Reed gave it this anchor of legitimacy in the New York theater community. And Martha Plimpton, I think, came on board next, who does a lot of theater herself. And it was always important to me. I wanted actors with theater backgrounds, because this was essentially going to feel like live performance. We would have such long takes, shoot it in chronological order, that it was very important you had actors that could be engaged and listen and react as strongly as they could speak and handle their own dialogue. So that was always key. And Jason and Ann came on last, but they all have very strong theater backgrounds.
You spoke about a Reed, which is important, because I think one of my favorite moments, and that empathy that you talk about in the eyes of the shooter's parents, right? I think one of my favorite moments of the entire film was when when Jay's going into detail about what happened, right? He's finally kind of breaks, right? He finally kind of snaps a little bit, because he slowly is just kind of sitting there letting it kind of come. But Richard retorts with this detailed explanation of what unfolded. Kind of take me behind, like, what happened there. Like that, I thought that was just a powerful moment that made me feel for the first time, oh my God, like Richard, he is empathetic. He is emotional. Like, he understands their pain.
Yeah. He takes it all in himself as well. That it's not just sort of the victim side, and that it's sort of, I know these details because it's my pain. It's also his pain. He's also a victim. It's sort of expanding the notion of victim in these tragedies, which I found to be very truthful in my research. Now, look, there may be exceptions, but in everything I read, I never found monsters, right? I never found, I hate to say it, but maybe what you were hoping to find, that to make this easier, to make this make more sense, that it was, this sort of evil, or abusive family, or these sort of dark upbringings. Then you think, oh, that now I get it. That's just not what I found, which is far more tragic and complicated. And to have these characters of Richard and Linda Ann Dowd and Birney to show their real compassion and real desire to help heal, and these people help heal. I think the greater idea is speaking to a way that we can all try to make an effort towards more healthy conversations. And I worry deeply about the sort of divided country we live in, and it feels increasingly more divided, and it feels like our leaders in news have no interest in reconciliation, that you get more finger pointing and more blame out of them than I would like to see. And this felt like an opportunity, based on what I had researched and felt truthful as well, that here are people trying to make an effort to heal, trying to reconcile, trying to share each other's perspectives and really listen and work at a healthy conversation where they try not to interrogate, they try to remove the resentment and not blame one another. They're just trying to understand. And I feel like and maybe I'm speaking for myself, it's something I want to see more of. I don't want this effort towards forgiveness to be so extraordinary. I want it to be more ordinary in our lives and in our society.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I loved about the film as well, was the fact that not just that we sit in the room, you know what I mean? And I'll talk about that in a second, but the fact that they're having it's not always the healthy conversation throughout the film, as people see, but it's very therapeutic. It's two people on two different sides, because you do have a character in Jay who's very opinionated after the fact, and you actually have Richard who's very opinionated after the fact. How important was it for you to not make it political and let us just sit in that room together with these four characters?
Yeah, no, look, you're absolutely right. They don't do it perfectly, right? And that was something, as a writer, I really tried to lean on or take comfort in, I should say, because I haven't really written anything before, and so I tried to sort of embrace or kind of believe that, hey, contradictions and redundancies, and it should be messy. That's how we really talk. That's how life is, and this is not going to be perfect. They are going to get emotional. They're not going to say everything they want to say perfectly, right? And things will happen that are unexpected, right? So that was something I tried to really lean into. At the same time, there is this deep desire to find meaning and to sort of explain something that might not be able to be explained. And I feel like on some small scale, we all experience that in our lives, and trying to sort of make sense of things, whether it's pain or our place in the world. And so in many ways, the room, what happens in this room is sort of this study of just kind of human beings and human behavior. Now, I wanted to stay in the room because in my reading about these meetings, and another big source of inspiration was the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in South Africa, because I didn't get transcripts of meetings between parents, right? Obviously not, but I did. There is a great deal of information, and there are transcripts of some of the amnesty hearings. And I would look at those as, here are families of victims meeting with perpetrators, or families of perpetrators. They come together in an effort to heal and possibly forgive. I wanted to study those meetings to understand how that might work. But at the end of the day, there's this, they don't have the conveniences or safety or sort of luxury, the safety net of film, right? There's no flashbacks, there's no music, there are no pretty inserts. All these people have in real life is sort of their words, and looking across the table from people that they feel possibly hate and blame towards, and working through that. And so I wanted to honor, if this makes sense, try to honor the courage and the strength that it takes to sit in a room across from someone you feel these things for, and work through that. So it was always important to me from the very beginning that we can't compromise that. If we cut out of the room too much, or if we have, emotional score or pretty inserts or a flashback, we will undermine the whole effort that these people are making, the courage that it takes to do this. And we want to sort of celebrate that. I want to lift this up and sort of, give it a kind of platform that's unique. And so that was the idea by staying in the room and not leaving. So, I want the audience to think, 30, 40 minutes in, oh my God, is this really happening? Are we just going to stay here? Because I want to draw attention to how remarkable that is, if that makes sense.
It does a lot. So right before the final scene, I felt like watching this, I could finally breathe, right? I was like, all right, it's over, right? But when Ann Dowd walks back into the room to tell that story, I felt like you deliver a knockout punch, right? Why did you choose that to be that final moment that we kind of remember?
Yeah, well, I appreciate it. Look, I mean, I don't want to. It's a sort of a strange, movie about spoiling, because it's 75. There's a 75-minute conversation. There's not in one room, so the idea of spoilers is sort of weird anyway. But look, so I want to be careful how I talk about this. But it was very important to me, right? Clearly, to have this sort of epilogue, right, or sort of this moment afterwards. And look, I don't know where I stand on forgiveness. I was so inspired by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission when I first learned about it, but it also it terrified me, because I didn't know if I was capable of this. I didn't know if I'd want this sort of idea of restorative justice. Like I'd probably want punishment. I'd want retribution. I'm certainly not trying to tell people, oh, you just should forgive. Like, I don't know. It's so complex. And forgiveness, I don't think it benefits everyone equally. And in some instances, it might be even almost, you could say, transactional, in the sense that the person who wants to grant it or give it is doing so to sort of improve their own life. That their life is stuck. They're stuck in such pain that they're just going to try. Maybe if I forgive this person, I might feel better and be able to sort of move on. But what does it really do for the other person? How does it really affect them? What is the relationship? Like, I really wanted to know and explore the complexities of that. And so there's that, right? There's that kind of conversation. And then I think what's sort of suggested towards the end of the film is that maybe there's something deeper, maybe there's sort of a better, or maybe even a greater way to reconcile, in the sense that, and I think she's speaking towards, and I'm open, I love that it can be interpreted different ways, but to me, she's speaking towards this sort of idea of real human connection, physical human connection. She sort of suggests, how well can you ever really know someone, but how hard have you really tried? And this notion that if she had been able to embrace her son that felt so much hate, even if it meant physical harm upon her, that she might know him, that she would have known him. And this idea that, forgiveness is could be wonderful and beautiful and affirming, but maybe there's something deeper, and maybe forgiveness might even be irrelevant if we can connect to each other in deeper, more meaningful ways. If we can see one another's shared humanity through our shared suffering, forgiveness might not even be necessary. That there might be a sort of a deeper empathy we share for one another in our community and our society that can help combat these problems, as opposed to these efforts to forgive, right? I don't know if that makes sense. It's not wrapped up in a bow for me either, right? So
I've watched the film 4 times. I've watched the film 4 times now, and each time I've taken in something different away of how I feel, right? Like, I don't know how to explain.
Yeah.
I still don't know what I would do, right? You know what I mean? Each time you watch, as a parent especially, I don't know what I would do. Would I sit down in that room with the individuals on either side? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know the conversation is important to have, no matter, and it doesn't just have to be about this situation. I think it could be put in a box for every situation where conversation, whether we agree or disagree, is important to have.
Yes, totally. I mean, does what I say resonate at all? About that?
Yes. Yes, 100%. Yeah, because like I said, when I first watched the film, I was like, man, whoa. And then when I watched it back again, like I said, each time she speaks, it brings something different to me. You know what I mean? And it's weird because I talked to you a little bit about before. This film is something. It reminded me why I love movies. It did.
Thank you.
And it being in this box, and I just tell people when somebody says, what's your favorite movie of the year? I've watched 300 movies this year. Mass. Watch it. What's it about? Just watch it. Like, yeah. I want everybody just to open their eyes and ears and just sit down and sit with the film, because I think it's important. It's one of the most, in my opinion, one of the most important pieces of film that we've seen this generation.
Oh, thank you.
It's powerful.
Thank you so much. But thank you. I mean, it means so much to me. Because I've worked so hard on it and continue to work hard on it. But you said something that's really important to me. Now I'm gonna paraphrase or butcher it, but it was you suggested that it's not even about the event necessarily. It's about how we can listen to one another and speak to one another despite our differences. That is the snapshot of what the movie is that. And speaking again to this idea that I feel real anxiety about the country my daughter is going to grow up into because of where we are now and how it does not seem to be improving, and in fact the opposite. And here is just this very intimate movie in a room, but it's about people trying to counter that movement and work against it and move towards a place of hope and change, positive change, and a path forward that can be healing and not divisive, right? So I appreciate that, because I think the shooting element, the school shooting element, scares people off. I mean, I had a parent at my daughter's school say to me the other day, I really want to support your movie, but I'm just too scared to see it. And I think, well, there's not violence in it. There's not, there's no flag. It's not exploitative. I don't think it's sensational. It's emotional. That's all it really is. It's emotional. But these difficult conversations that are they're so hard to have, but necessary, that they're hard because they're meaningful. They're necessary because they provide catharsis, and they provide a place to be afterwards, a new space to go to. And these are things I'm trying to cultivate with the movie and sort of promote these ideas. So anyway, it means a lot to me that this stuff resonates with you.
One last question before we go. What's something you learned about yourself throughout the making of this project?
Oh, yeah. I mean, oh God, it'll get me emotional. I mean, look, I dreamed my whole life of directing a movie, right? And as long as I can remember, but I wasn't doing it, and I think having a child, being so affected by the Parkland shooting, wanting my daughter to grow up seeing me as someone that was being active about his career as opposed to passively waiting for a phone call from my agent, and my happiness was all dictated on someone else's decision, all dependent on that. I wanted to do something different and show her sort of a different role model, right? And I'm not out of this. Like, I really feel like I'm still working on it 24/7. But there's been a maturation process, like an intense maturing over these past 3 years, and a seriousness sort of laid over my life that I don't know if I go back from. I think that one of the reasons I wasn't making the effort to really direct a movie is because I was, having too much fun, or just kind of, just sort of a selfish young man, as opposed to sort of, then I had this other person in my life that was more important than what I wanted, and so something has happened in the sort of the timing of all these things, and becoming a parent, and devoting my life to this story for 3 years, that I don't know what the other side of it looks like, but it certainly feels more serious and sort of more adult. Seems like a silly thing to say, but there's a devotion to storytelling and art in my work and my life just as a human being that was not there before. And so hopefully it means more work. But look, I mean, this has been the most rewarding journey of my life. And so how could that not affect the way you see fulfillment, and it's sort of changed me forever. You know what I mean?